Ever wonder what happens when you try to hide from police in a dryer? You get caught in the spin cycle of justice. A Vancouver man thought he was playing the ultimate game of hide and seek when he spent 45 minutes swinging from cables above a restaurant while throwing bricks. Turns out, gravity always wins. Welcome back to Wow Amazing. Today we're looking at crazy stories of criminals who thought they could beat the system, but ended up beating themselves instead. Before we jump in, hit that subscribe button like these guys ruin their chances of staying free, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the fun. These stories are so wild, you'll wonder how these people even make it through the day. This is our countdown of the dumbest criminals who tried to outsmart the law and failed big time. Number 10, the social media snitch. Let's start our countdown with a tale that proves sometimes your biggest enemy isn't the police, it's your own need for online validation. Back in 2015, Christopher Wallace found himself in quite the predicament. No, not the legendary rapper, but a burglar from Maine who clearly didn't inherit any street smarts from his famous namesake. After successfully pulling off a break-in, Wallace managed to evade capture for several weeks. The cops were stumped, search parties came up empty, and it looked like this criminal might actually get away with it. So naturally, Wallace decided this would be the perfect time to head home and hide in the most obvious place possible, his own house. But here's where our story takes a turn toward the absolutely ridiculous. Wallace couldn't resist the urge to document his brilliant hiding strategy on Snapchat. Because nothing says master criminal quite like broadcasting your location to all your followers, right? His first post showed him sneaking back into his house, which immediately caught the attention of his so-called friends. One of these loyal companions decided to do their civic duty and tipped off the authorities. When police arrived at Wallace's residence, they conducted a thorough search but came up empty-handed. Just as the officers were about to give up and leave the property, Wallace made his second catastrophic social media mistake. Unable to contain his excitement about outsmarting the police, he posted another Snapchat story bragging about his genius hiding spot inside a kitchen cabinet. The same snitch who ratted him out the first time immediately called the cops again. Officers walked straight back into the kitchen, opened the cabinet door, and found Wallace cramped inside like an overgrown jack-in-the-box. Wallace was promptly arrested and charged with burglary, proving that sometimes the only thing standing between a criminal and freedom is their own desperate need for social media attention. Number 9, the Craigslist hitman hunter. Moving from social media fails to online marketplace mishaps, our next story proves that some people really don't understand how legitimate business transactions work. In 2008, Anne-Marie Linscott from Grand Rapids, Michigan, discovered that her romantic life wasn't going according to plan and decided to take matters into her own hands in the most illegal way possible. 3 years earlier, Linscott had fallen head over heels for a man named John during what she thought was a meaningful affair. Unfortunately for her, John decided to end their relationship and return to his wife, leaving Linscott feeling scorned and apparently completely unhinged. Rather than moving on like a normal person, she hatched a plan that would make even the most desperate soap opera character cringe. Linscott turned to Craigslist, the same website people use to sell old furniture and find roommates, to post what she thought was a cleverly disguised job advertisement. The listing offered freelance work with decent pay, which naturally attracted several responses from people looking for legitimate employment opportunities. When 3 unsuspecting job seekers contacted her, asking for more details about the position, Linscott revealed her true intentions. She offered to pay them $5,000 to eradicate John's wife, essentially trying to crowdsource a murder through online classified ads. The 3 respondents were understandably horrified and immediately reported Linscott to the authorities. Her Craigslist post became all the evidence police needed to build a solid case against her. The woman who thought she could hire a hitman like she was booking a cleaning service found herself facing serious criminal charges. Linscott was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison for attempted murder, proving that some people really don't understand the difference between legitimate freelance work and felony solicitation. You know, Anne-Marie's Craigslist catastrophe proves that some people really don't understand how the internet works. But our next genius took a completely different approach. Instead of broadcasting his crimes online, he decided to wear them like a badge of honor. Number 8, the tattoo confession. In 2004, Anthony Garcia was a member of the Rivera 13 gang in California. and he had successfully committed a brutal outside a liquor store in Pico Rivera. The victim was a rival gang member, and Garcia managed to escape the scene without leaving any solid evidence behind. For 4 years, the case remained cold while Garcia walked free, probably thinking he had committed the perfect crime. But Garcia's luck ran out in 2008 when he was pulled over for driving with a suspended license. It seemed like a minor traffic violation that would result in nothing more than a ticket and maybe a court date. However, police suspected Garcia was involved with gang activity, so they followed standard procedure and photographed his tattoos for documentation purposes. These routine photos eventually made their way to Detective Sergeant Kevin Lloyd, a veteran officer who had been working gang cases for years. As Lloyd examined the images, one particular tattoo caught his attention, a detailed chest piece that depicted a very familiar scene. Garcia had commissioned a tattoo artist to permanently ink the entire liquor store murder scene onto his chest. Garcia's gang nickname, Chopper, was represented by a helicopter firing at the victim, who was depicted as the planter's mascot, Mr. Peanut, a derogatory reference Rivera 13 used for members of rival gangs. The tattoo couldn't have been more incriminating if Garcia had included his full name and confession in the design. Detective Lloyd immediately recognized the connection to the unsolved murder case and used the tattoo as evidence to build a case against Garcia. The gang member was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 65 years in prison, all because he decided to turn his body into a permanent crime scene confession. Number 7, the deathbed confession backfire. Our next criminal proves that honesty isn't always the best policy, especially when you're not actually dying. In 2009, James Washington was serving a 15-year sentence for attempted homicide at the Turney Center prison in Nashville when his world took an unexpected turn. The 61-year-old inmate suffered a massive heart attack that left him clinging to life in the prison medical facility. As Washington lay on what he genuinely believed was his deathbed, he was overcome with guilt about a secret he had been carrying for over a decade. The weight of his conscience became unbearable as he prepared to meet his maker. In what he thought would be his final act on earth, Washington called over a prison guard and made a shocking confession. He admitted to committing a brutal murder in 1995 that had never been solved. The original investigation had been abandoned due to lack of DNA evidence and witnesses, leaving the victim's family without closure for 14 years. He described the location, the method, and circumstances surrounding the murder with chilling accuracy. But here's where Washington's story takes an ironic twist that would be funny if it weren't so tragic for him. Thanks to the wonders of modern medicine and the dedication of the prison medical staff, Washington made a complete recovery from his heart attack. Unfortunately for him, the legal system doesn't have a take-backsies policy when it comes to murder confessions. The authorities used his detailed admission to reopen the cold case and build a solid prosecution. Washington's 15-year sentence was upgraded to life imprisonment with a minimum of 51 years, meaning he went from potentially getting out in his 70s to dying behind bars. Number 6, the GPS ankle monitor genius. Our next criminal thought he was clever enough to commit crimes while literally being tracked by law enforcement 24 hours a day. In 2008, James Wombles proved that some people really don't understand how modern surveillance technology works. Wombles had previously been convicted of stolen property charges in Greene County, Ohio, which resulted in him being fitted with a GPS ankle monitor as part of his supervised release program. The device was designed to track his every movement and ensure he stayed within the boundaries set by his parole conditions. Most people would see this as a strong incentive to stay on the straight and narrow path. But Wombles apparently viewed his ankle monitor as more of a fashion accessory than a serious legal restriction. Between December 2008 and January 2009, he embarked on a crime spree that targeted multiple homes in Miami County, Ohio. He successfully broke into several residences and made off with various electronics, firearms, and other valuable items. For a brief moment, Wombles probably thought he was getting away with the perfect crimes. He had managed to avoid detection during the break-ins, hadn't left obvious fingerprints or DNA evidence, and seemed to have covered his tracks well enough to avoid immediate suspicion. The stolen goods were probably already being sold or hidden away for future profit. What Wombles failed to realize was that his GPS ankle monitor had been faithfully recording his exact location during every single burglary. While he was sneaking around breaking into houses, his ankle bracelet was essentially creating a detailed log of his criminal activities for law enforcement review. When police finally connected the dots between the break-ins and started investigating, they simply pulled up Womble's GPS tracking data. The electronic evidence showed that he had visited each crime scene at exactly the times the burglaries occurred. It was like having a criminal leave a signed confession at every single location he robbed. Officers used the GPS data to track Wombles to his current location and arrested him while he was sitting in a car filled with the stolen merchandise. The ankle monitor that was supposed to keep him out of trouble instead provided all the evidence needed to send him to prison for 10 years. Number 5. The fake job interview trap. Our next story shows what happens when criminals underestimate law enforcement's sense of humor. In 2016, Alberto Lopez thought he could outsmart the cops with a simple change of scenery, but he ended up walking straight into one of the most obvious traps in criminal history. Lopez had been working as a bank employee at a financial institution in Cottonwood, Arizona, when he decided to supplement his income through some unauthorized withdrawals. He managed to steal $5,000 from the bank before his criminal activities were discovered and a warrant was issued for his arrest. Rather than face the music, Lopez decided to skip town and move to Phoenix, where he hoped to lay low until the heat died down. For an entire year, he managed to avoid capture by staying out of his hometown and keeping a relatively low profile in his new location. But homesickness eventually got the better of Lopez, and he started longing for his old life back in Cottonwood. After 12 months of hiding, he convinced himself that enough time had passed for the authorities to lose interest in his case. Surely they had moved on to more serious crimes and forgotten all about his relatively minor bank theft, right? Lopez decided it was safe to return home and even started looking for legitimate employment in his old stomping grounds. While browsing job listings, he came across what seemed like the perfect opportunity, a dispatcher position with excellent benefits in a stable work environment. What Lopez didn't realize was that the job posting was with the Cottonwood Police Department, the same law enforcement agency that had been looking for him for over a year. When he submitted his application, the hiring department conducted a routine background check and immediately discovered his outstanding warrant. Instead of simply tracking him down and making an arrest, the police decided to have a little fun with their wanted man. They called Lopez and invited him for an interview, which he enthusiastically accepted. On the appointed day, Lopez showed up at the police station dressed in his best suit, probably rehearsing answers about his qualifications and career goals. As soon as he sat down for the interview, Lopez found himself in handcuffs, facing felony theft charges, and probably wondering how his job interview had gone so horribly wrong. Applying for a job at the police station that's hunting you takes serious guts, but it's nothing compared to what our next criminal did. This guy didn't just confess to his crimes, he turned them into a best-selling novel. Number 4, the best-selling confession. In 2000, Bala became consumed with jealousy when he suspected that a businessman was having a relationship with his ex-wife. Rather than handling this suspicion through legal means like divorce proceedings or private investigators, Bala decided to take matters into his own hands in the most violent way possible. He kidnapped the businessman and killed him in a fit of rage, then disposed of the evidence carefully enough that police found no useful leads when they investigated the disappearance. After 6 months of fruitless searching, the authorities were forced to close the case due to lack of evidence. It appeared that Bala had committed the perfect crime. For several years, Bala lived as a free man, while the victim's family wondered what had happened to their loved one. The case joined the growing pile of cold cases that might never be solved, and Bala probably thought he was in the clear permanently. But instead of keeping quiet about his dark secret, Bala decided to pursue a career as a novelist. He wrote a crime fiction book called Mugsh that told the story of a that bore suspicious similarities to the real crime he had committed. The book featured a protagonist named Chris, who killed someone under circumstances that closely matched the actual murder. Mugsh became a surprise bestseller in Poland, which meant that thousands of readers were essentially reading Bala's confession without realizing it. Among those readers was a member of the Polish police force who noticed the striking similarities between the fictional crime and the unsolved real case. The officer began investigating further and discovered that Bala's novel included specific details about the murder that had never been released to the public. These details were so accurate and insider knowledge specific that they could only have come from someone who was present during the actual crime. Bala's own book became the primary evidence used to reopen the cold case and build a prosecution against him. He was arrested, tried, and sentenced to 25 years in prison, all because he couldn't resist turning his criminal activities into creative writing material. Number 3, the self-improving mugshot. In 2016, Donald Pugh was wanted by police in both Ohio and Georgia for an impressive collection of charges, including driving under the influence, vandalism, and arson. When Pugh failed to show up for his scheduled court date in Ohio, law enforcement decided to take their search public. They released his official mugshot online and asked for the public's help in locating the fugitive. But Pugh had a different reaction when he saw his wanted poster circulating on social media. Instead of being concerned about his legal troubles or worried about getting caught, he was apparently offended by the quality of his mugshot photograph. In his professional opinion, the police had chosen an unflattering image that didn't properly represent his best features. So Pugh decided to take matters into his own hands by providing law enforcement with better promotional material. He took a carefully posed selfie that he felt showed him in a more attractive light and sent it directly to the police with a request that they use his preferred image instead of their original mugshot. Pugh probably thought his response was hilarious and showed his sense of humor about the whole situation. He might have imagined police officers chuckling at his audacity or even admiring his confidence in the face of serious criminal charges. Instead, his self-submitted photograph became an internet sensation that drew massive attention to his case. All this extra attention led to a flood of tips from people who had spotted Pugh in various locations throughout Florida. The increased visibility made it impossible for him to stay hidden, and police were able to track him down and arrest him within days of his photographic critique. Donald Pugh's photography critique was hilariously stupid, but at least he was trying to improve his image. Our next criminal thought he was being clever by selling stolen goods online until he accidentally tried to sell them back to their original owner. Number 2, the Facebook bicycle sting. In 2013, Marque Moore had built quite a reputation as San Francisco's most prolific bicycle thief, having successfully stolen 10 complete bikes and over 100 bike parts from various victims throughout the city. Moore had developed a systematic approach to his crimes, carefully selecting high-value bicycles and components that could be easily resold through online marketplaces. His operation was so successful that he probably thought he had found the perfect crime. There seemed to be an endless supply of expensive bikes to steal and eager buyers willing to pay cash for discounted cycling equipment. Using Craigslist as his primary sales platform, but Moore's downfall began when one of his victims refused to simply accept the loss of their stolen bicycle. Instead of filing a police report and hoping for the best, this particular victim decided to take a more proactive approach to recovery. While browsing Craigslist for a replacement bike, the victim stumbled across a listing for a bicycle that looked suspiciously familiar. Upon closer inspection, they realized they were looking at their own stolen bike being sold by the person who had taken it from them. Rather than confronting Moore directly, the victim contacted police and worked with them to set up a sting operation. They arranged to meet Moore at Ashby Transit Station in Berkeley under the pretense of buying the stolen bicycle back from him. Moore arrived at the designated meeting spot with the stolen bike, probably expecting another easy transaction that would put quick cash in his pocket. Instead, he found himself surrounded by police officers who had been waiting for him to make his appearance. The arrest marked the end of Moore's career as the Bay Area's most prolific bike thief. He was charged with possession of stolen property and held on over $100,000 bail. Number 1, the YouTube bank robbery confessional. Now let's talk about the top spot on our countdown as a criminal who decided that committing crimes wasn't enough. She also needed to create a detailed documentary about her illegal activities for the entire world to see. In 2012, 19-year-old Hannah Sabata pulled off what initially seemed like a successful bank robbery in Nebraska, stealing over $6,000 in a getaway car without being immediately caught. But Sabata had different plans that involved sharing her criminal success story with the largest possible audience. Instead of keeping quiet about her crimes, Sabata decided to create a YouTube video titled Chick Bank Robber that provided a detailed play-by-play account of exactly how she had committed her crimes. The video showed her displaying the stolen money on camera while enthusiastically describing the robbery process from start to finish. In her homemade documentary, Sabata explained how she had stolen the getaway car, entered the bank with a firearm, demanded money from the tellers, and successfully escaped with thousands of dollars in cash. She seemed genuinely proud of her criminal accomplishments and wanted to share her story with anyone willing to watch. She probably imagined her video going viral for all the right reasons, maybe even launching a career as a social media influencer or true crime content creator. Unfortunately for Sabata, her video did go viral, but not in the way she had hoped. Law enforcement officers saw the confession video and immediately recognized it as evidence of serious criminal activity. They didn't need to conduct a complex investigation or gather forensic evidence. Sabata had provided everything they needed to build a case against her. Police arrived at her house the very next morning and arrested her before she could begin her planned shopping spree. Her YouTube confession became the primary evidence used to convict her of bank robbery, resulting in a sentence of 10 to 20 years in prison. Sabata's case stands as the ultimate example of criminal stupidity in the digital age, proving that some people really don't understand the difference between confession and bragging. Well, folks, there you have it. 10 criminals who prove that sometimes the biggest threat to getting away with crime is your own incredible stupidity. From social media confessions to DIY mugshot improvements, these masterminds of incompetence showed us that outsmarting the law is a lot harder than it looks in the movies. Which one of these brilliant criminals was your favorite? Did any of their spectacularly dumb decisions surprise you? Or have you heard of even more ridiculous criminal fails? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Just maybe don't confess to any crimes while you're at it. Thanks for watching, and remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed watching these criminals outsmart themselves right into prison cells. This is Wow Amazing, signing off until next time.